Hey everyone, good to have you here for the Agentic panel. We have a number of people who are already on Frontier, using agents, building them, and hopefully also scientifically researching them. So let's welcome them on stage. We have Daniel Shi from Minimax, AI evangelist. We have Yuxuan Zhang, technical evangelist from GOSIM AI. So probably some of you do use Minimax and GLM. We have Mike Basias, hopefully correctly pronounced, CTO, Tech AI. We have Mo Sadek, technical director at ls.io. And we have a researcher from Jülich Supercomputing Center, Research Center, Jülich-Helmholtz Association in Germany, and Lion, non-profit organization, Marianna Nezhurina. So I will have a seat myself, Jenia Jitsev, scientific lead and co-founder at Lion, and also a lab leader at Jülich Supercomputing Center. So we start with a very short, how do you call it, back in Germany, Blitz introduction round, starting from the right to myself with Daniel. Please say some few words about what is connecting you to the current frontier on Agentic AI.
Thank you, Jenia. My name is Daniel Shi. I think I really appreciate this opportunity today to give a short introduction, and I think this introduction will really interest you. The reason it is simple, I'm not an AI native guy. 10 years ago, when I studied in Telecom Bretagne. It's we say in French, la fin du monde, the end of the world. It's very west from in France, and my domain is telecommunication. However, after I graduated, I failed to find that work at the domain of telecom. I think it is because at that moment, telecom has become already a domain very mature. So I had a chance to find a job in the domain of cloud. However, after several years, cloud also merged a lot. Actually started from technology like virtualization, containerization, Docker, Kubernetes, maybe you are familiar with, and big data technologies, and right now, AI. So I really appreciate the last 5 years I worked in the cloud companies, which give me a lot of chance to really have the touch with the most SOTA technologies. Right now, I'm working in Minimax, one of the, I think, a global leading AI companies dedicated to foundation models worldwide. So what we say about foundation models, maybe today is a part of the subject we'll talk about. It is the model that finally we use. It is the unique model, like model for text models, LLM, models for creating music, models for generating videos, models for generating sound. So they are the unique models and basic ones, which is the foundation that we use in the agent. Of course, Minimax also have the product line, which we develop our 2C applications and our agent, and actually it all enrich the total ecosystem. Maybe later I will come to more details. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Infrastructure for agentic execution. And the mysterious question mark from 2030 on. So let's see what's going on the side of GPU, I guess. GPU AI, Yuxuan.
Yeah, nice to meet you. And I'm very honored to have a simple speech today. Very interesting that instead of like Daniel, he's not AI native generation. I'm much younger, and I'm born after I'm born in 21st century. So I just finished my bachelor degree, and I touch AI a lot. So since that forum like the Resonate or like the Google Impact CN, I try a lot about AI, and now I'm very honored to have a choice, have an opportunity to enter GPU AI. Also researching large language model, and also writing code now, especially for like the open source and infra. So I do a lot of open source things, and also do some like pull requests and issue support for like any problem in GitHub for about GM. So this I'm working now, and I found that especially in these 2 years, like the agentic AI is now mentioned much more than before. Okay. No. So, okay, sorry. Agentic AI is much mentioned than before, especially in 2025 and 2026. And also in my daily work, I use Agentic AI much more. And I remember like 2024, we used like copilots. And now we use like, we have so many tools now, like Cruiser, we have the Cloud Code, we have lots of things, AI tools to use. And the AI helped me to do like the much more, I can do more core than before. And I found that in this period, something that a whole long horizon task, because I should be before. Okay, so I just speak in words. So I found that like the long horizon task, that means the model should do a lot of things in a lot of page. They usually include like more page, different file, different code, and even the different project, and you need to combine it and to do a whole pipeline of the work. So that is very popular in 2026, and I found that it is. Maybe I think it's the future, or like a trend of like using with AI agentics, and so I will talk more about like the whole long horizon like task and how to use it, about harness like the agent tool framework in this talk. So this is my introduction.
All right. So yeah, after having infrastructure, we have core developer and also user perspective. Good. And now we move to Mike, so maybe also a user or even somebody who is doing business on Agentic Frontier. Mike?
Yeah, thank you everyone. So I did my PhD in an area of AI, which is called automatic software optimization using genetic and biology-inspired algorithms. So it was one of the very fascinating papers in the beginning of how can I make code faster automatically before LLMs. So the idea was, can I make machines self-evolve their code before LLMs? So I published this paper with some colleagues from UCL, where we practically were looking where data structures and other libraries are used in the code, and we automatically optimize them. So it was a bit before LLM's approach to automatic code optimization. So we applied this on open source libraries, and that worked quite well. So we made some pull requests and we optimized existing libraries, but Google and other libraries where we are saying, okay, change this data structure from array list to linked list, etc. So that was the start of our startup. So then we realized, okay, why do I need to keep rules? LLMs are very, very great at giving you ideas, even if they are imperfect, very, very early. So what we did is that we practically have built a fully agentic optimization platform. My passion is to take existing code and push the limits of it. We have made open source pull requests like QuantLib libraries, where a single file change improves 30% execution time at that moment. So now we have built all this end-to-end platform that has achieved recently amazing results. So practically, I see LLMs and agents incredible tools, and if you can measure things, AI can do impressive stuff. So our approach is similar to the main keynote of Professor Timothy, which is evolution and combinatorics across a code base. So we find the code, automatically agents find the hotspots with input or from profilers. Then they find the hotspot and then they work on them, they optimize them, and then recently we had optimized Quen models on AMD machines, OpenVINO libraries with Quen and other models, and it always works as far as you can measure it, and kernels as well. So I'm very excited to be in this summit and see how we can potentially, collaborate with different teams, with open source communities, where I think we can contribute a lot in making the code faster, more energy efficient, and more clever. So that's really cutting edge agentic systems that gets me excited to see what AI can build that humans haven't managed so far.
Yeah. So that's I guess quite a clear application case, optimizing existing systems that already work and pushing them even further in incremental cycles. So surely we'll have some slot to talk about that. And then we have Mo with his perspective. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how the clicker works. I'm sure we'll figure it out.
It goes, yeah.
There we go. Okay, I just pressed it way too many times. Perfect, amazing, we're done. So, my name's Mo. I work at a company called Alice, kind of like Alice in Wonderland. But that's not where I've been my entire life. I've spent a lot of time breaking things, including things in college which professors didn't enjoy, all the way to enterprises and a bunch of different types of companies. So I spent a little bit of time as a consultant doing penetration testing. After that, I really wanted to see what it was like to build within an enterprise. So I joined a couple of different organizations like NBC and Warner Brothers, different media organizations, to see what it would look like to build a security program and what it looks like building security from the ground up. After that, I went to Bosch, where I first started to work in AI and machine learning when we still didn't think AI was smart, and it was just algorithms that were learning slowly but surely. And at that point, I remember we would laugh about how AI was, at that point in time, not really a big thing. It was kind of a gimmick. And here we are a couple of years later, all the researchers that I've worked with have gone to like OpenAI or Anthropic, and they're like, oh my gosh, everything's so much different than we could have ever expected. Like we were working on self-driving cars at first, and then forecasting algorithms, and now it's like you can do anything. I've even seen people use AI to do image recognition on toast, which is very weird. But a lot of the things that I focus on now are where things can go wrong. So how do we get harmful output from AI? What does it look like when these systems break? Can we do it reliably? And how do we make these systems, I would say, unpredictable in ways? How do we make output that we expect to be how do we responsibly break these systems, or predictably break these systems? So we focused a lot on like communicative technology and seeing where it breaks when people interact with the AI, where like from chatbots to agentic systems internally, all the way to like even just that's actually good enough. The next part that I'm really focused on as a security practitioner is how we enable other people to adopt AI responsibly. So whenever you kind of think of a security team, it's like, well, you're likely going to stop one of our projects from taking manifestation. So why would we go to security to get this done? I actually believe in the complete opposite. We need to be able to enable everyone to build with AI, but we want to make sure it's still safe and we're still able to get the best outcomes for both the business and the end user. We want to make sure that we're not leaking information. We want to make sure that, especially like, I remember when OpenClaw first launched, the first thing that we did was we went into open source and we built a skill security scanner, because these open source dependencies that, essentially all skills are open source dependencies for agents. So it was like, okay, we've got to like secure this. Otherwise, you don't know what's happening. You're going to get a bunch of NPM-like incidents happening across agentic security, which is exactly what started to happen. Even now, when we have all these standards and just regulations coming out, it's like, how do you prepare other organizations and users to really, and businesses to be ready for these things? So that's another thing that we focus on. For me personally, I take a lot of pride in the contributions that we do for open source. So communities like OWASP and COSI, and et cetera. I think that's on the other slide. But we contribute to these communities because it's important to be able to build these things back stronger and better. Yeah, so I think that's it.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, I guess important capability and security perspective that we have to also dedicate some time to. And now we have Marianna, who is now researcher on Frontiers, also open source community representative, involved in current projects for evaluating agentic models like Terminal Bench, and projects that deal with figuring out what data sets are required to actually train strong agentic core building blocks like Open Thoughts agent. So let's see whether she gets the slides on to have a glimpse on her perspective. So is it a Linux or a Windows machine? This then depends on our luck. I think it's a Windows. Yeah, so that would be a perfect demonstration if we would have basically a simple Claude code running in the session and hacking the display. Would probably work well. Yeah, so it seems to take a while a bit. So maybe while we still have some hope to get the slides in place, we could talk about the European grounds and how Europe is dramatically lagging back in producing building blocks for agentic systems. Especially, I think, in the sense of foundation models. So I think Mo had some glimpse into Bosch AI research, which is, I guess, was sitting in Germany, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So they were based in Stuttgart,
Yeah.
right?
We have something. Oh, perfect. Okay, so let's open this box a bit later. Marianna, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for introduction and for waiting. I'm Marianna Nezhurina from Lyon and Jülich Supercomputing Center. It's in Germany. I'm also doing my PhD in computer science, and I've been an AI researcher for 3 years. And all my research was exactly at the AI boom time, and I've been doing mostly large-scale model pre-training and post-training, as well as a lot of open source contributions, because me, as a scientist, I have my own personal interest in open source, because I believe that open source is basically what enables science and progress in this field. Unfortunately, my slides are not how they're supposed to be, but first of all, I wanted to talk about a terminal bench. One of the core agentic benchmarks for terminal agents that is widely used now in industry as well as in science. It was a very large collaboration between a lot of institutions. First of all, Stanford and Laude Institute, and I am proud to be part of it. So basically, this is a benchmark that was crowdsourced for terminal-based agents. So the agents that, like Claude Code, work in terminal, and the tasks were proposed, evaluated, reviewed with a lot of rigor by multiple researchers and open source contributors and just people who are interested in this stuff. It has more than 100 authors, and so we can see that even the most recent, here I made a screenshot from the leaderboard, even the most recent models still struggle with Terminal Bench 2. And now there is a Terminal Bench 3 in development, which is even harder problems, even more rigorous reviews. And there is also Terminal Bench Science, which is specifically scientific hard tasks. Another thing that I'm proud to be part of is basically the continuation of Terminal Bench called Harbor. This is the framework that allows agents to it is basically both kind of a harness and it supports a lot of adapters for like different benchmarks, and it allows people to use it for data generation, like agentic traces, as well as training, integrations like SkyRL, and obviously evaluations with all kinds of different benchmarks supported out of the box, like SweBench, obviously Terminal Bench, and so on. So the Harbor basically encompasses everything that you need for agentic training, data generation, and evaluation in one place. And it's very modular. It has a lot of developers and contributors, and it's very useful for people who want to train, develop, and use their agents. It supports a lot of agentic harnesses. And another project that I've been working on with collaborations with Berkeley and Stanford is Open Thoughts Agent. It's a continuation of Open Thoughts project, which was about data-centric view on reasoning data. Open Thoughts Agents is data-centric view on agentic data for terminal-based agents. And the main goal is to, by using data curation and data interventions to train the best agent. We do both SFT and reinforcement learning. We use Terminal Bench, SweBench Hard, and other agentic benchmarks as the main score for how well our training is done. We use open source models, and all code-based data environments, recipes, evaluations, and so on are going to be released and are already released. It's an open source project. So I think, and we use Harbor as the main framework for agentic interaction and orchestration. Yeah, thank you.
All right, yeah, thanks a lot. I think it would be the best mode for us to have a lively discussion on any bits that are of interest. I would give an attempt to open the exchange in the direction of, yeah, I think what was called in Marianna's slides, open pipelines. So basically, what importance do we give to the ability to research and use the agentic systems fully local, fully sovereign, where both model, data, and everything that leads to their creation belongs to the researcher or the user. And if you think about this open pipeline as a quite vast road to produce components for the agentic systems, what would be your take on which critical components are still not open enough or not open at all and are missing, and we need to make a push to make this more reproducible and reusable in the community? Maybe Marianna, as somebody who right now talked about this open pipeline projects that trying to open sources, can start, and then everybody can kick in.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that a lot of important bits that enable open agentic pipelines are thankfully available like strong base models from mainly Chinese labs, but also American labs and European a little bit. I think that a lot of things that are not available is the recipes and datasets that should enable reproduction and incremental improvement of these models for agentic tasks. And of course, there are a lot of things like scalable code bases, like training frameworks that have, like, there are wonderful people like VLLM, SkyRel, and so on that work on hard to make these things available to people, that people can do local inference, training, and evolving, test time scaling, and so on. But I think that it's important that, to know that this is open source projects that have tons of contributors. People work hard on this, and I think this is what needs to be supported, and people need to spend time on this and appreciate this and continue to work on this as much as possible.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned base models. We have two people who are responsible for producing one of the powerful ones, so both Minimax and GLM. We have the open weights models out there. Everybody can use them with the harness of their choice. But obviously, as Marianna was noting, the data recipes are not really something that is given to the community in open form. So what would be your take on the data-centric part of the agentic adventure, and is there a way to make it more openly available than the current situation is?
Maybe I start first. Since we can say Minimax is a provider of foundation models, and I really enjoyed the slide just now Marianna presented. And to be honest, when we release a new model, since Minimax LLM text model really cares about its capacity for coding, there are two benchmarks we will really concentrate on. One is the SWE Pro, another one is Terminal Bench, because it really simulates as a developer how it can really solve the real world problem, how it can interact in the terminal environment. However, as Marianna mentioned about, for example, missing of information, data with support, I think also maybe after the panel, I really want to exchange with you to see maybe in the future how we can maybe have more interaction, how we can cooperate better, and even if you need some contribution help also directly from the foundation models part, because it is a community. Each time when we release a new model, normally also in the end it will be open weights, and normally it's not, if that's for commercial use, of course. Actually, there are many other purposes like research purpose, study purpose, and there are many angles that we can have more frequent and connections.
Yeah, so maybe there is at least a way to do research-only artifacts that are fully reproducible, so including the data sets, even if they are not landing up on the very frontier. But at least they can be touched by research community to get to know anything about what interventions improve, what interventions are.
And for GM, also we also like to get the model open ways, and meanwhile we support like for we are more concerned about like instead of like the benchmark, that is the basic, but we also like concerned about like the when you're using the model, that if you want to deploy yourself for safety reason, if you don't use APIs, or you can use Echelon or like a VM, another thing to infra the model. That is why we do like in this month after GM 5.1 release, we spend a lot of time like to optimize the infra experience about the model. But for the data, what we open source some benchmark in our like inner use case. For example, we released the Zcode bench. This is a different branch between the terminal bench and the other coding bench. It is concluded by our employee that we conclude some kind of case had not been mentioned in the traditional bench, and we also open source this kind of data. But it's just a little bit because just like a few hundred, maybe thousand of data of the bench, and you can get the very long input of code, very long or maybe hard output of the model, and you can get the model capability of the coding. But you mentioned about like the more data opens, we're still like exploring, and maybe we saw some like the community that open source SFT data about the model, and it's very good. And we are also discussing like whether you will open source and more about the data. But maybe we can have a conversation later about the data open source it. But for what we are doing is that fully open way with MIT license, and also like the infra support. And we also support some of like if you want to fine tune the model, and for like the open source framework about fine tune, we are now supporting such as the Megatron or like the Llama Factory, the kind of open source framework.
Yeah, I think the good thing about open source is also that at some point it leads to community-wide adoption and standardization. So I guess in terminal bench case, it's clearly useful just to rank models, because then you all of a sudden have the same set of benchmarks everybody can agree on, and then you can produce ranking that you can to some extent trust. I guess the same, so this open pipeline has the appeal of let's make faster iterations in a standardized way, where the comparisons are all of a sudden possible along different distributed efforts. Whatever you do with a common standardized open pipeline, people can build on the top of it and also make comparisons between the efforts much easier, right? So I guess for the framework you were talking about, Artemis, that actually uses some in-house optimization tools to improve existing code, that also could rely completely on like local deployed agentic systems. And if they would be open, would be there an advantage for you, or you prefer just in-house? So well, yeah, what is your take on that situation?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know how to build agents properly end-to-end. So data is one part, but there are a lot of things when you build an agent. So our approach is build the first version of the agent. You need the benchmark to know how good is your agent, and then it becomes an optimization problem. So we published this paper, it's called Evolving Excellence, where we took existing agents that are running on existing benchmarks, and where we put Artemis, and where we optimize practically the prompts, but also the model selection and other parts of the code. So then the agent was fully local and better than the original agent, but also fully private and free. So I see this altogether being a combination of hardware becoming better models, and more open source data. So we work with a lot of universities, actually. We have given access to a lot of universities where PhD students, they take there was a math agent, and they practically evolved it and made it better, fully with a local model, instead of them using a GPT-5 or whatever. So, and also we have open access to whoever wants to use this flow. So it's a bit of, I see agent development like test-driven development. Practically, it's like a researcher is practically, give me the hypothesis, what is this agent need to be doing, and then how do you guarantee that this agent is doing correctly with the metrics that you need, including security, for example. And then once you have that first version, then the latest models are great. So we see now people having more and more agents running fully local, fully secure. But people sometimes don't know like what an agent means. If I want an agent to classify all my emails, to do this and that, because people are becoming more addicted to cloud code or doing everything, still you have a very probabilistic agent. So if you know what you are asking from your agent and you can measure it, then open source models and local models are the solution to that.
Yeah, so I guess this part of having something fully open that can be deployed by everyone and run by everyone, and then clear ways to measure the outcomes and also verify, so verifiable problems and so on, gives this very clear path to self-improving systems with all the implications. So for now we have a lot of these moving bits, so people write by hand harness, people compose data sets in some ways that are also driven manually. So one can imagine that all these loops are then subject to agentic optimization up to the point where the whole system itself is subject to optimization, and then you rewrite the full thing. So, and this leads, so it's on an optimistic take, this is a path to improving basically everything. But you were talking about security already, and this is also a clear path of dual usage, where you can improve also the potential to do harmful stuff. But you can also improve potential to defend against harmful stuff. So what would be your take on this kind of a, I don't know how to call it, the good guy, the bad guy, the police, and if you talk about an agentic system that can be both, a protector and attacker?
Yeah, there's kind of a duality when it comes to security. We have like this concept of red teaming, blue teaming, right? Where you kind of have the defenders and you have the attackers. And we always say that the attackers are a couple of steps ahead of where a defender will always be, right? You need to get attacked to know how you're going to get attacked, which kind of sucks, right? You can make some predictions on where you're going to get attacked, but you sometimes don't know where those are coming from. Most recently in AI, I think we've all heard of like the Anthropic Mythos model. I think that's like kind of one of the best examples of this, this paradigm, where you have this model that was way too dangerous to be released. But what does that actually mean, right? If someone had access to this type of model or the capabilities of this model, could they potentially cause harm that is critical to humanity in some way, right? So when I think about it, it's like, okay, well, what if someone found vulnerabilities in key pieces of infrastructure using this model, just like we have a concept of script kiddies, people who run code and don't know what's actually happening, and they go and exploit stuff, right? So what would happen if like they had access to these types of models? This is like, in my opinion, this is like kind of a weird way of thinking about it, because the way LLMs have already evolved, all of this capability will disseminate. And I don't think that it's right to keep that to a small group, right? Rather, we need to understand how these things are taking place. As a matter of fact, at the same time, a bunch of researchers were like, well, we can actually use open weight models and find the exact same types of vulnerabilities. We just need to understand these attack chains, right? So you train on attack chains and you're able to do this. What I'm trying to get at is that the capabilities are accessible. The methodologies are known, right? It's how reasoning happens. It's understanding what offensive security and adversarial attacks look like, and then being able to reproduce them with a model. That attack chain is available, right? It's human ingenuity at that point.
So is it then in any sense different with a situation of having an AI here in the game. It seems that people were playing this, I don't know how to call it, cat and mouse game in the attacker-defender, where attackers are a bit ahead. The defenders have to deal with the fact to cope with new attacks anyways. Yeah. So is there here some radically different situation with agentic systems being able to optimize for both? Or is it just now an iteration of the same game?
It's the same game at a larger scale, right? Because, I mean, you can, on GitHub, right, like one of the biggest things that we see are like bug bounties. And bug bounty programs have like exploded in popularity because people are using agentic systems to now go and find bugs on GitHub, right? This is just like what we see in plain sight, right? At the same time, we're seeing indicators of compromise, or IOCs, that organizations are being attacked at a much higher frequency because these attacks are much cheaper and much easier to pull off because agentic systems are they're so scalable, right? An attack that would, I think most recently, there was a benchmark with GPT 5.5 where it was able to take basically go and execute a kill chain that a human takes 12 hours within like 11 minutes, right? So imagine the scale of that, imagine the cost of that. It is way cheaper to use AI than to have a human researcher do this all day, every day, right? If it's going to take me 12 hours to do something and it takes a model 12 minutes, I'd get 100 of those models as opposed to getting me. Right?
Yeah, so this is, I guess, a very important and to some extent urgent question to all of us as a society. What does it mean to have these new capabilities in place, and what does it mean to have them open? So what is the organizational structure, coordination structure to give the edge to the more positive powers that are stuck in the new capabilities versus the negative powers that you can also unfold? So what are the procedures that we can do to give basically in the security case the defenders the edge, and maybe more general? So we at Lion also see now that it's not only the research question whether something is open, so that you can study these systems as an academic, but it is also a thing that creates various types of inequalities. If you think about the availabilities to access tools that can solve any fundamental problem. So if you have access, you can solve fundamental problems of tough times. If you don't have access, you cut off from this. So the question becomes how to organize the access types that on the one hand, the equality in terms of progress is guaranteed. On the other hand, that you don't have situations where all of a sudden solving fundamental problems means solving problems how to hijack something and gain power very quickly so that it gets a runaway effect. So anybody has ideas how we can organize specifically open ecosystems that push more the positive edge and avoids the negative ones? Anyone?
I guess we have to study more game theory. At some point,
right.
Things will balance. If you think like 2 years ago or 1 year ago, only specific companies had access to best models. Now, open source models, more people have access. So there is a better balance, I would say. But there is a lack of knowledge of how people to use those systems, which will take a long time. I don't have a solution.
Do we have, let's say like this, very practically, do we have any evidence that the security risks go to the critical amount, also to the critical point where you have basically difficulties to defend against? Is there any evidence accumulating that we do have a problem, or are those just, for now, speculations?
Well, I mean, there's always been a security problem, but I want to take a step back to talk a little bit about the enablement piece, because I think it actually helps think about the security problem, right? So while I'm like framed as a security professional, I'm actually a builder, and I love to build things. But when I build things, I'm not thinking about GDPR. I'm not thinking about CCPA. I'm not thinking about the EU AI Act or anything, right? I want to build. I want to have fun. I want to create cool things. I'm not the only one. There's millions of people that are now able to build as fast as they can think. And this is really what it comes down to when we start to think about like agentic systems and security at scale and enabling people to build the best things that they want to at a speed that they want to. The only way we do that is in open sourcing stuff. So some of the things that, like, when we talk about a framework for creating like enablement at scale, it is using benchmarks in the right way, right? And making sure that this is available so people know what models are available, what they can use, how they perform in different situations. It is also open sourcing architectures, right? So for example, a lot of folks will go and default to using an LLM and say, this is exactly like I'm gonna use it for every task in the world, right? But there's like no book on teaching them how to use like a small language model in like a very niche use case and use low compute and not have them waste tokens, right? Because that's just not profitable. How do we make these types of techniques available to more people? Additionally, another framework that I'm working on is called proof of control, which it helps us think about how we can validate the data that is being used by an LLM and a provider when they give us the data, if that data is like basically the proof of information throughout that life cycle can all be validated and it is all like true and reasonable and it's confidential. There's integrity within that data, right? This is just one part of that standard, but standards like this that can now be implemented, that can now be given to other folks to help them define what it means to have quality throughout the development process is exactly how we get to a safer place when we're building systems at scale, especially because now you have the one person, like million or billion dollar company, right? It can be anyone. So we need to enable people, not organizations, to use LLMs and adopt agentic systems at scale. Right. I mean, this is something that you also spoke about, right?
So
people don't know how. Yeah.
This is like quite optimistic perspective. Then, so you say if the things are in the open, and there is some, equal distribution of access, and people will figure out how to deal with security, and also there will be some ways to play the old game, right, where the defenders still have the ways to dampen most of the dangerous actions. Okay, this is good. So I guess so for the European ground, yeah, it seems that all those things are naturally compatible with what Europe would like to do. So openness, democratic access to capabilities, using capabilities in the sense of democratic decision making and so on and so forth. But we see that technologically Europe is far behind for whatever reasons. And it would be actually interesting to have an exchange from the perspective of Chinese builders who embraced open source very eagerly already quite some time ago, at least 3 years, I guess. I'm now trying to think what was the very first. So, I mean, everybody knows about DeepSeek R1 release, but I think even before there was some clear tendencies that China is going open weights. So, I mean, open sources, of course, then in our sense, full pipeline being open, including the data, training, source code, and open weights models itself. But clearly in open weights realm, we have a lot of powerful building blocks coming from China that definitely rival the American ones. And if we are fair about European capabilities, if you begin to compare something that comes from European grounds, let's say probably the champion is Mistral still in the European grounds. If you compare this an agentic function, even on standardized benchmarks, Mistral doesn't look that great. So what are the reasons why Europe is lagging behind, although officially it should have embraced open source a long time ago and be on par?
So Jenia, I think I'm well placed to reply this question because I studied in Europe for like during 10 years. and my master degree was here, and I worked here like 7 years, but finally I went back to China last year. So I really see the difference. One thing I do not very agree with you is that European is falling behind. There are many intelligent minds here. Indeed, the ecosystem is different. How USA is working, China is working, Europe is working. When I went back to China, I see, well, there are many use cases. There are many people just trying to figure out how the models or the AI technology can really change their daily life. They don't care about those fancy technologies, how model can have good performance. Due to the well-known reason, we do not have a lot of chips in China, but each chip, we make each chips count. So that's the reason why I really feel like why we have such a phenomenon of open-minded in China. Everyone, when they find something, no matter by Zhipu, Minimax, Kimi, DeepSeek, we wrote a lot of theories, and so everyone can directly use that. I remember last year, also it's around the Spring Festival in China, DeepSeek just released I think it's V3, right? V3 R1, and following the very famous architecture MOE. MOE to solve a big problem that finally it only can trigger part of the parameters while get a very good result. Why we choose MOE? It is not because we are so good at technology, it's because we have so many limitations in China. So in that way, if we are not so rich, imagine that we have limited resource, limited all kind of conditions, so everyone should help each other. Indeed, in Europe, I studied here for like 10 years. There are many different regulations and there are many different rules. One thing I feel, maybe it is already outside of the AI topics. I feel the happiness in Europe is much higher globally. So if I already achieved my, I don't know, life goal, why should I always think about how AI can change my life?
Okay. So we are just having it too good and nobody wants to improve on the already high living standard. So we should then lower the living standard as a solution, I guess. Okay, I mean, fair enough. I think the interesting part is that you mentioned MOE as one of the architectural slight innovations that happened. And I can quite remember that some push came actually from Mistral. They had the Mixtral back then being introduced and being quite a strong model. So actually Mistral was not doing so bad back then. But then something happened, maybe due to the European high living standard, maybe due to some other things. I guess I'm not definitely saying that Europe has not the potential, technological and scientific, to catch up. But this is exactly the interesting question, why all these potentials that are given are not used to produce at least, say, the same level of open weights artifacts like it's happening in US and China.
I mean, if I could comment on that too, because I actually agree, like, Europe is not behind, right? It's just the problem is looked at in different angles. And we were talking about this 2 days ago at another AI Vision conference. But if you look at the events that have changed the landscape in the US and Europe and China, specifically in how development happens, it's usually because of some incident. And I hate to bring it back to security, but it's true. When you look at all the GDPR and the EU legislation, why does that exist, right? It's to keep people safe, right? It's to ensure that your data is controllable and it's yours, because who wants their data everywhere, right? In the US, what is the incident that made the US care more about security and innovation, right? It was when a company was impacted and it cost them millions of dollars. It is a financial kind of thing, right? So when we attribute risk to the operations of a business, then a massive change can take place, right? When you look at China and you see, okay, well, like, they are building out in the open with all of these models. Why is this happening? Because, and this is, I think, a great thing, there's a lot of, like, everyone needs to take part in the success, of that particular model, right? It is not like US or the EU. It is different. It's more of a community success. So when we take all the ways that each one of these kind of powers has grown in AI capabilities, it has evolved in that type of model, right? Anthropic and OpenAI have all built in closed doors, right? Google has built in closed doors, and for their most flagship models are usually closed source, right? In Europe, we don't see a lot of models, but we see lots of legislation and regulation come out of there with how other folks can build these types of things and how users are impacted.
But you would say then that legislation is something that brings Europe back, so to speak, as a player? Because I hear voices of people saying that legislation and regulation is a bit of a pseudo action that actually tries to hide the fact that technologically, scientifically, Europe cannot basically produce something like UN35 in open form. So, it would be actually interesting to talk about this, because you saying, and you also saying Europe is not falling behind. I think Marianna was giving quite a different take in some of our conversations, where she cooperates with Stanford and Berkeley and sees the very clear difference of this technological and scientific crowd to what she interacts to in Europe. So basically the change in the level of skills of the crowds is clearly different in interaction. And the builders and researchers able then to produce something like QN35, they have to be equipped with a set of skills and possibilities to do so. And it seems to some extent that on European ground that is not really happening. So while you have all the potential, you have people who studied well and so on, in the end, to produce an artifact, and this is now just an example of QN35 level, which is a building block for agentic systems, as not the capability that you readily find in Europe. So if you were to assemble a team now to target them and say, we want to have European QN35 just for fun, how likely would be the probability that you can do it in a fast action and it will be produced? I mean, Marianna is willing to.
Yeah, if I can add my 5 cents. I want to say that I also think that Europe lags behind. And you can clearly see this by not only model releases, which we know that Europe is completely not compatible with China, and like both closed and open source models, doesn't matter. You can also see this, for example, by looking at open source software that enables building, training, evaluation, and so on and so forth. Like, for example, you can look at Megatron, VLM, SGLang, all other technological advancements that allow people to deploy, use, train, play, research, and so on and so forth, improve the models that are open and closed, doesn't matter. You see that Europe almost doesn't have any significant, like there are a lot of European contributors to open source projects, of course, but there are no like European-led open source project which is like industry standard, which is
so, yeah,
like
this
widely
is maybe
used.
we could, yeah.
And I think that the main problem is not the skill, like you said, that I say that I don't think it's a skill, because you see a lot of European-based contributors and AI researchers working, for example, in America for American companies and so on and so forth. I think that the problem is not the skill or knowledge. I think the problem is mentality, and this mentality that actually led us to all this security regulation is exactly the mentality that keeps Europe behind. Because when you try to think about this, you say that these regulations are helpful, and probably they are. I'm not saying they are not, but they have also a lot of harm. For example, some models that Meta released like 1 year ago or so. I'm not saying they were particularly great models, but they were open source models. They were not available in Europe. And there are a lot of cases like this that Europe itself actually shoots itself in the knees because they introduce these regulations, and you say that they are good and they are a good example that other countries should follow, but they don't follow this because America has its own strategic interests, China has its own strategic interests. They would not care about some regulation that EU imposed on them. EU doesn't have this power, both economically and I don't know, politically, geopolitically, to impose some regulations on other players in this field, and the only thing that they end up with not having enough capability, output, and strength in this field, but just having this regulation. So, yeah.
So I think it's a very good point to talk about open source software stacks. So I think scikit-learn is a very famous one that came from Europe, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. But you see, if you take a look on scikit-learn, that is more like classical old machine learning stack. So if you think about the modern machine learning stacks to train, distributed train models, to do agentic harness, to do whatever it takes to have this open pipeline in shape, we probably don't come up with so awful many that are in Europe. So there's a clear problem here.
Yeah. I think it's also the investment side. Investment in US are totally different in startups than in Europe. Here you have to prove before you get investment, while in US you can get much easier investment. And I think China is also quite more risk takers in investing and supporting good research teams. While, you know, maybe in Europe, if we consider UK Europe now, it's London is a place where recently there were like some professors from UCL, from Google DeepMind, they raised like £1 billion just to build stuff, which in the past never happened, right? So because to do this kind of research, at the end of the day, we need GPUs, we need or not to be comfortable.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But
now
agree.
it's the time.
I do agree. Yeah. We need the 4C. I remember someone just summarized. Capital, very important. And the compute, also very important. Culture, maybe in Europe also, regulation is part of the culture to protect the existing interest, maybe because they do not want the interest to move away. I forgot the final C, but someone just summarized the 4C. Also, maybe we can think about the previous generation, not before AI. In China, we also had a generation of internet companies, a lot of famous internet companies, like some Chinese version of Google, Baidu, or for example, TikTok. The reason why actually they merged at that period of time, because I think there's one reason, because of data. In China, actually, we have a very large market, and data actually we can say the market shared all the internet data. So when the data is there, consumers create the data finally it will create those kind of internet companies. I don't know if this kind of momentum also exists in the era of AI, because in Europe, one of the problematic, because I do research why there's no such big giant internet company there, because there are many different fragmentation of data. Maybe that's also one of the reasons. Maybe just previously, the point I would mention, there are many brilliant European minds, effectively, when they saw that, okay, maybe geographically, if my work cannot be done here, they will not stay. They will just move, I don't know, to China, to US, to UK, to some place that he can really have money, have all the support. Even not speaking Europe or US, just for China. Last year when DeepSeek came, the company actually it was based in Hangzhou. Hangzhou was not one of the biggest tech center in China. Other city mayors, they are thinking about why we didn't have DeepSeek in our cities. Why Guangzhou do not have that? Why Shanghai do not have? Why it's not Beijing? Even for them, they are thinking about that. And they finally summarized, because Hangzhou has a very good policy for capital, for the freedom to attract those startups. As a Chinese, you can go no matter which city you want. You can go Hangzhou, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and you can enjoy the policy there. So I think it's kind of a little the same stories. global.
Another thing that is about it's some about framework you mentioned, because that in Chinese we know that Zhang and VM this kind of framework are general, but in Chinese we usually a famous framework. In other way, it is from specific one. So like for a kind of student, they don't care anything. They just want to like make sure the research can be done, or like they help them to do homework. It's a very easy, it's a very simple like goals, and they use AI or anything to build like the framework, or like to enter any hackathon, because Chinese there's so many like this competition, and they build like this, and I pretty like to open source it, because usually they just, for example, they spend like a few hours, like maybe a few days to write this simple work, and then so many, because China has so many people working on this, so maybe usually you will meet some people readily have the same goal or similar one with you, and they will help you to do the framework. So that the code becomes more, and then you will find that some of the framework that has so many like pull requests, because, for example, the classmate A want to reach the goal A, and the B like this is similar but a little bit different. So I add some like add some code for, so now you can vote for A and B, and now A, B, C, D. So there are so many become more and more like the function it has. So now become like from like a small project or demo become like a framework that is now like so many like the Chinese like famous like open source like the framework is like, for example, the DeFi is very like famous of this. Like in 2023, it's just very simple. But then I found that so many developers just add one function call, like add one model support, and maybe one chain, or like even a different vector database. So they add so many details on it, and this framework become much bigger. So that is in Chinese culture what the developer are doing.
Yeah, I think Marianna wanted.
Yeah, I just wanted to say another like thing that I think about is important about, you said about capital, that capital is the problem, and I don't think it's the problem, because Europe is like very rich. There is a lot of money in Europe, I think it's the same problem as like the security regulations. The same thing is with capital, that people are just like very risk aversive compared to China and US, where you can have investors just giving money to some bold ideas to people who didn't prove themselves in whatever project. Whereas in Europe, you have all these regulations, and regulations are not the reason. They are actually the symptom, and the actual reason why it happens is more like risk aversion, like people who are always look at their backs and always think about all the different worries and all the different people that they might have some troubles and whatnot. You will never build like technological advancements if you always think about some other things except technology and science.
Yeah, so it's a pity we have to wrap up. I think the discussion reached actually a very interesting point. Maybe we can continue afterwards. So I guess the wrap-up message, we started with agentic practicalities, but land up in a very political discussion, which is, I think, unavoidable, because it seems that Europe, by trying to be, so we have a high living standard in Europe, we have a lot of measures to protect the rights of citizens, which is all correct. However, at the point of the transition now, where the agentic systems and the AI brings so much capabilities to solve fundamental problems, this becomes a trouble. It becomes a trouble to be overprotective. So there has to be a new balance in Europe. Otherwise, it seems that Europe will lose the capability to catch up with these artifacts that provide you a way to solve fundamental problems and improve the society. So to have a positive track. So and then it means in the end actually on European grounds losing power and becoming actually dependent, what Europe probably doesn't want, from other powerful players who embraced this technology. So maybe we can discuss what does it mean. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say the last thing. Like there was the C that we were missing. I don't know if this is it, but it could be conviction, right? Where right now I think everybody has to take a risk. and you are either going to risk that or you're going to hope that the things that you can do with AI are going to be so great that it's worth taking a risk for, or that the human risk of like implementing this great things with AI is too much, and you need to back away from it. You have to choose which side you more believe in, and then that's probably going to be what's going to drive you to do what's next, right?
Yeah,
whether it's better regulation or a better model.
Which seems to be even not maybe so much AI specific, but for any scientific technological advance that has transformative power, the same question. So it becomes, do we answer differently for AI as to whatever fundamental physics, or do we answer it the same and attempt to push technology while making sure that it's still a safe way to push it? Okay, thanks a lot. Let's thank the speakers and hope we can continue the discussion.
Thank you.